Okay, so yay, welcome. Welcome, Amy. We are here again for the second session of the How to Empower Your Kids to Listen program. And what I would love to do is just kind of introduce and recap a little bit of the module. Yeah, so the module that you would have gone through is the Stories and Beliefs module, which is a huge one. It's a really, really big one in terms of just seeing the there's a massive big chopper going around my house, so hopefully you can't hear because that's all I can hear at the moment. What this module is about is getting to increase the awareness and increase, the understanding of what it is that comes before our big feelings. Yeah, because so much of the time we sit in those big feelings, or we're stuck in those big feelings, and we're so overwhelmed by those big feelings, and it's like, oh my God, how do I even understand what those feelings are for, and how do I kind of find my way out of them? And when as I would have shared, in the module and in the video, when I finally understood, or when I had the awareness given to me from my mentor of that our feelings are simply indicators of what's coming before. And everything that comes before is what's driving us to what's driving the result, of those big feelings. And once I understood that, and once I kind of got over the fact that when he said my big feelings weren't important, because that took me a while to get over, because they're so big. The feelings can be so massive, and you can feel so overwhelmed that, for having sort of somebody say that to me, it was just like, I didn't want to hear it. I was just like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that, and pushed it away. So when I started to unravel this a little bit more, and created that cycle of being able to give myself a way to understand it. So that's the BISIV cycle. We'll come up with a better name for it. The belief, stories, feelings, and behavior cycle. And it really helped me to understand what the end result was of whatever behavior I wasn't enjoying, because we're talking about kids listening or not. However, it can be anything as an end result, anything at all. Something that's not working for us in our lives as parents, in our lives, full stop. So, and the way that this cycle works, which comes all the way back to the beliefs. So that's the core of this module, and starting to understand that, that there even is a cycle, that something does drive our behavior, because a lot of the time we feel like, I was about to say don't have any choice, or have choice. I choose the way I behave. We might think with our conscious mind, and actually we don't at all. It's purely a cycle that comes from our past, and this subconscious programming, which we operate in for 95% of our lives, which is kind of scary when you think about it. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm just like a robot, just playing it out. However, we can start to use our conscious mind to spot the patterns, understand where the behavior is coming from, what's driving it, and then start to change things. And what I would love to hear, Amy, is how that all landed for you, what you thought of this, what sort of came up. And I know that you're doing other work, in your counselling, and so I'd love to see how this kind of fit in for you. So let's just dialogue around it.
Yeah, I have done quite a lot of work around this. Like I say, partly in my training to be a counsellor, but also I've done some work with another lady this last year, looking at sort of my beliefs, and she does sort of get you to try and challenge your core beliefs, and so I have been doing that, and I am a different person to who I was a year ago. I was trying to sit and think about and like you say, I think I completely can see that they're always part of you, and I can see that. But it's funny how when I was thinking about what I said right at the beginning of that, like a year ago, about what I felt about myself, I can feel the shift. And I'm still sort of, other ones I'm still like, like they still, like, you get little moments where you go, why am I doing that? Oh, that's because of that. So I think, like you say, I think it's always going to be that challenging, taking that, recognizing that that's what's driving me, and how do I not fall into the same behavior. But I think being responsible was a really big belief of mine, that everything was my fault and I'm to blame.
Yep.
And that went right back to my parents being, they got married because they were expecting me, and everything else that followed, even though they've just celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, they're happily married, but for the whole, every time they argued, every time anything went wrong, it was my fault because they got married because of me, and that, that's never something they could have told, they would never have told me that, but I knew that they'd always told me I was the reason they got married. And I think that's like a little seed in my head. Children do blame themselves, don't they? And that's what I did.
Oh, absolutely. And you can feel it as well. That's the thing. You can feel it. I mean, you may have heard energetically, you can feel the energy, and we'll be talking about this in the next module, which is Yes Energy. Children can feel things. And I think you probably heard me speaking about this in the Embodied conference perhaps as well. When children are small in that first 7 years, they're feeling everything through their bodies. So you would have been aware of it and not been able to understand it, and would have been creating that belief around it, even though you knew that was the reason why they'd gotten married. Energetically, you would have been feeling that kind of almost kind of, oh, well, that's what we have to do. That's what we should do. That's how it sort of came about, them getting married. I mean, how amazing that they've been married for 40 years. I mean, that can be one of your, kind of things to start to disrupt that belief. It's like, well, hang on, they're happily married. I mean, they've chosen to stay together for 40 years, not because you're a grown adult now, so there's no reason for them to stay together for you anymore, if you know what I mean.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? When you see them, when you look at them, it's much easier, because that's the way I've been doing, is looking at them and then going, well, is that true? And it's like, well, actually, as a child, it's a belief that you hold, and I did hold it, and I could feel it. And then it's like when you actually analyze it and go, well, how, as a child, as a newborn baby, how was I responsible for anything? Like, I had two grown-ups who were, responsible. So I think that's really helped me. But I still feel that, like when the kids are being difficult, that's what I feel is it's my fault.
Yeah.
And I think I really struggle with this whole, like, the children are programmed in the first 7 years. Every time you say that, I'm like, oh, but mine are past 7. Because I'm like, oh no, I've done it, I've ruined them forever.
and it's never too late.
Yeah,
never too late. I mean, the thing is that with my journey, and when I think about it, because I didn't actually start to really really empower myself and really accept myself as a parent until my oldest boy was over 7 as well. He was just coming through that 7 years old, and that's when I started to really understand this. And I thought the same thing, and I thought, oh my God, and he is an incredible kid. He's an incredible kid because of the work that I've done, obviously the work that I'm continuing to do. And when you think about it, we're unraveling our own patterns at, I'm 45, and I've done a lot of work of unraveling patterns in the last 7 or 8 years. And, we're able to do it. So the thing is that your kids are still young, they're still young in the big scheme of things. So, you can totally let that go. Absolutely let that go. I mean, the thing is that that's where they get the bulk of it. But now you're going to be starting to, completely fuel them with different information and different feelings energetically, because you're going to be feeling different. So
yeah,
So you can let
And that's
that.
the thing, I keep sort of almost, I keep trying to program in almost, keep telling myself I did the best I could. I've always been striving to be the best parent I can. I've done so many different things, but my other belief that I had was that I'm not enough. I will never be good enough. So it's like I'm responsible for everything, but I'm also not enough. So
What a combo!
so I can't win.
what a combo! And it's like, really, you know, how do I get that? And I mean, it's you know, and there's so much beauty in that because it just doesn't make sense, you know. And it's like, so you know, they're kind of cancelling each other out anyway, which is beautiful. Because then you can sit there, and what I was going to say as you were speaking, it's like when you can sort of step back, you know, and it's almost like you're not in your life anymore, and you can step back and look at it and go, yeah, nah, that's just silly, you know, as if you were looking at somebody else's life. And the other thing that I love to do, and one way that I work with a lot of clients, is to bring them into a state of innocence. And it's almost like you're looking at the world with fresh eyes, you know. So it's like, wow, what if I just let all of that meaning go? How would I be looking at this situation? And things really, really shift and change from that place. And I was talking to a friend today about beliefs, because he had some big things coming up. And one thing that we spoke around was, you know, when you start to become aware of your belief, because I was aware of my not good enough, because, you know, that's my top one as well. I was aware of that for a long time. You know, I knew it was there. I kept trying to run away from it and pretend that it didn't exist, and, you know, love myself and affirm myself and, you know, do all these things for myself. And it just, in the hope, and this is the piece, in the hope that it would go away, you know, in the hope that I would change it, in the hope that I would, you know, somehow fix it, heal it, you know, delete it, whatever. And when I finally realized that that's not the way, you know, it doesn't work like that, you know. And it was such a relief, because it was like, actually, I don't need to delete it, change it, rewrite it, and all of the things that most people talk about. You know, oh, you just need to rewrite your beliefs. You know, it's like, oh yeah, okay. Do I just write it on a piece of paper? Okay, that's not my belief anymore. I'll cross it out. And when you know, I've worked with various different coaches and mentors, and, you know, I grab all the things and I, you know, create it into my own thing. And when I had the realization that, you know, didn't need to do that, it was like, oh my God, this is less work, less. And I'm all about less. I don't want parents to have to think, you know, because it's so daunting when you think, oh my God, I've got these 12 beliefs that I know are part of me. How do I get rid of them? You don't need to get rid of them. You know, you don't need to get rid of them. And the way out of them is through acceptance. Yeah, is through acceptance. And to be able to just completely put your hand up, like you've seen me do a number of times, and say, hey Matt, wow, that's me. Yeah, I'm not good enough. I really have this massive belief at the very core of who I am that I'm not good enough. You know, and there'll be some, you know, there could very well be some grief that comes up with that, some, you know, some resistance and fight, and you know, still wanting to push it away. And there you know, there may very well be a dynamic there that plays out, you know, a little dance of, you know, you sort of see it coming up again and you want to push it away, and, you know, you try and turn into it instead. But when that starts to happen, things really start to shift. So how did that piece land for you? I mean, is that something that you've come across in terms of the acceptance piece being the, you know, the gateway?
Yeah, I think so. I think just seeing it is massive, isn't it? Just knowing that it's there, and that's what's driving you. Because then you can, like you say, you just go, that's silly, that doesn't make it. And it's funny how even, and now I can almost see where they came from as well. Like a little while ago, my dad's got a really fiery temper. So, and my mum's always very emotional. So the other week, well, quite a long time ago now, my mum rang me up in tears because Dad was having a problem with something. Can you come round and fix it? And it was like, this is my life. This is what I grew up with. I became like the glue, everything. I made everything better. And so it was like, well, I can see, I'm like, well, Dad's a grown man. He should learn to control his emotions. And if he needs help, then he has to ask for it. And also, my mum's lived with my dad for 40 years. She should know that he'll get cross and in 5 minutes he'll calm down. But he would get cross, she would get upset, and like he would calm down and be like, why are you all crying? But we all had that. And so I can see that that's where like that responsible thing, like probably not where it came from, but that sort of reinforced, my mum did come to me to make it better. And it's still happening now, but because when it happened, I was like, because I had that awareness of those beliefs, I was like, oh no, I don't have to do that anymore. And it was like, well, and it just took away all. I did go around and help, but it just discharged all that feeling of needing to make it better. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but
I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I'm just wondering why did you go around and help? Because it sounded like you were kind of getting to a boundary there, like, actually that's not my role.
No,
how
I don't know. I think I'm still learning that. I'm still got that people pleasing in me. I think that's 40 years of helping see, and I think that's, and I definitely can see how that plays out in my parenting, because my youngest, has the same emotional spectrum like my dad. He just blows up. And I think growing up, my mum, we tiptoed around my dad. My mum encouraged us to tiptoe around my dad. Don't upset your dad, don't. And we would go out to eat where my dad liked. We would, because he would get cross if he didn't like what was on the menu, or we would not, we were getting silly at the dinner table. We'd have to shush you down, and mum would say, go and wash your faces, calm down, And he was a lovely dad. He's not, don't get me wrong, but when he was overwhelmed, and I can see that now as a grown up. But I recognise that what I do is I've transferred all that fear growing up of my dad's emotions, and I treat Jack like that. I treat him like he's my dad, and I'm afraid of his emotions. I'm a tiptoe around him, don't upset Jack. And then all my family feel resentment because they think that I put Jack first. Because I'm like, oh, don't, leave him alone. It's okay. He can't help it. That's like,
it takes you straight back there, right? It takes you straight back to those feelings of fear and overwhelm, or whatever it was for you. I'm assuming that there was probably fear of
when he got angry, we would run and hide sometimes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that, it makes complete sense. And now, being able to hold yourself in that that you're safe, it's your little boy, it's not your dad. Because there's huge things there that he was expecting the environment to change, and not himself, which is quite controlling behaviour in a sort of passive way, not taking responsibility for his own emotions. His own feelings, and expecting everybody to wander, to walk on eggshells around him. I mean, I hear you. I had a very similar experience in terms of my stepfather, and I didn't even realize how controlling he was until I left. When I was going to go overseas and travel, and then it was just like, woo, like this weight that had lifted off me. And my mother was the same. She walked around on eggshells, to try and keep the peace. And it's a dynamic that, yes, creates responsibility, creates people pleasing, and in terms of being able to start to work with that, your parents are there as the gift, as our parents and our children, and to be able to start working on those boundaries, with them, so that you can.
Because I think it's interesting, because I don't feel like my dad was particularly controlling. I feel like he couldn't control his own emotions, and I feel like it was more my mum who put in those boundaries that we don't upset
Yeah.
And then I'm doing that with Jack. I'm doing that now in my own family, what my mum did. And that's what I have more of a problem with. It's like my dad gets cross, but he literally blows up and then calms down. And he's never, he wouldn't really take it out. He wouldn't have wanted us to feel controlled, or if he knew that my mum was tiptoeing around him, he probably would be like, well, what are you doing that for? He could never understand why we were all upset when he got angry. And it's like, he's like, I'm just having a moment. And so I think it's sort of like I can see that my mum's role, and then I suppose I know that now that I'm doing the same, and it's really hard. I feel like I'm raising a boy who, I feel, this sounds really awful, and he's downstairs 2 floors away, so he can't hear me, but I feel almost like if he was my husband, I would feel like it was an abusive relationship. Like I feel like I'm almost, if I don't care, if I'm not addressing an issue, I'm raising an abusive husband, because he wants to control all of me all of the time, and I let him. and it just that whole sort of dynamic of just being really unkind, and then just doesn't see it. It just and I feel like I'm living in fear of his emotions and him, and it's really hard, because when he wants to be lovely, he can be lovely, which again is that thing, isn't it, of the honeymoon period after. And so
yeah. So how old is your little fella?
He's 8.
8. Okay. Yeah, because and how does your older boy respond when he sees that playing out?
I think he feels that's the sort of not fair thing. He feels like, why'd you let him get away with all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my eldest was always really calm, really easy, like you talked about connection and like boundaries. I felt like the boundaries were easy with him. He knew where they were. He could see them really easily. If he was misbehaving, I instinctively would think, oh, he needs a bit more time with me, or we need a little bit more. And I gave him more attention, more love, and his behavior improved. It felt instinctive and natural. And then with Jack, my youngest, he never feels safe. And obviously I know that I'm making that worse, but I'm compounding that. But I think naturally as a person, he doesn't feel safe. He doesn't see boundaries easily. No matter how many times you tell him where they are, he doesn't see them. And I'm not reinforcing them, because I feel like, how many times do I have to tell you? It's like each time you tell him, it feels like it's a fresh, brand new time. He's never heard it before. And it's like, he's 8, but we still have an argument every morning about getting dressed. It's still the same. I've only just stopped wiping his bum, because he can't possibly cope with that. And it's like, it's just, like he's my baby, but he's also my dad, and I'm and then
I really feel you in this, because I hear a lot of resonances with a lot of other people, a lot of other parents that I've worked with, and my own oldest boy. And you're right, he's not hearing you at all. He's not hearing you. And the reason being, and the next module will talk more about this, about the energetics. Because if you're talking about fear, and if you're talking about the fact that you have to tiptoe around him, he can feel that. Feel that, and it makes him really uncomfortable. And the thing is, when I went through a tough time with my older boy, I thought, okay, my older boy, he was 6 at the time, and I thought, okay, his behavior is scaring me at 6. He's going to be up here soon, not long. And that freaked me out. I thought I need to be able to navigate this situation from a place of confidence, from a place of being the parent, that you are the parent, and being strong, clear, and consistent with boundaries. So that's going to be a really big one for you. Because and that's why I asked about the dynamic between the 2 boys, because what played out with my 2, And actually, I think it was, I don't know whether I shared this in the We Parent from the Past, because so often when there's behavior between between the siblings, that may not be as pronounced because you've got a decent age gap between your boys. But my older boy would be picking on my younger boy, and because I didn't want to upset the younger one, I would protect him. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, and I would protect him, and not realizing that a lot of the behavior that wasn't okay was actually coming from him towards my older boy. And to flip the spectrum, to dance the opposite, and I worked with another family who was having the same problem with her middle child and her little boy. And when I asked her to use the tool, the dance the opposite tool, she said, "What do you mean? Like you mean be nice to the older, the middle one?" And I said, "Yeah, you need to love bomb that one, because he is the one that is actually, needing the support." And in terms of what you've said about your boys, that you obviously used to love bomb your older boy when when it was just you and him, when you could see that he was a bit out of sorts, and perhaps you're having trouble love bombing the other one.
I think I have trouble with my youngest. I find it hard to connect with him.
Yeah.
I feel when I'm with him, my heart feels drained. Like he doesn't have to do anything, and I feel like I'm waiting for to be drained. And then with my eldest, I think, my eldest is the one who sort of probably causes lots of, my youngest wants his older brother to love him so much, and he just doesn't want to know. He can't cope. My eldest can't cope with his emotions, his moving, he just wants calm and still and quiet. So they rub each other up the wrong way. My eldest is just nasty. There's a lot of resentment, I think, there. And I think now he's older, and because I think he probably feels like his brother gets all the attention, he doesn't get much attention. But he also, when I ask him, let's spend 10 minutes together, what do you want to do? He doesn't want to do anything with me, I think that's probably partly the fact that he's 13, but also he's just, I don't know, it feels like it's difficult to snatch time with him. And then with my youngest, it feels like, it used to take me 2 hours to get him to sleep every night, my youngest. And so bedtime is just, for such a long time, I would go into bedtime with the headset like it's going to be a fight, it's going to be hard work. And then it was, because I was willing it. But and I can see that now, but I literally just had this fear and dread, and every school holiday I would be like panicking. I remember being just before Jack started school, I was on the phone to the health visitor saying, like, I can't go. And then they were going to put all these things in place to help me. And then they were like, oh no, he's starting school, that's again, you can't have any support. And so just the point that I reached out and asked for help, they were like, no, we can't help you.
Wow, that's the way, that so often, you're trying to get support and you can't get it, when you actually do put your hand up, which is just not okay. That's when...
And I'd already been on, I was sent, did go to a charity and ask for help, and they sent me on a different parenting workshops, but they were all, things that I did with my eldest, and I'm like, yeah, but my youngest doesn't respond to that. He doesn't, He confounds me, but he also reminds me of me. And I think there's talk about like the I am sensitive, and I've accepted that now. I own it. I read about the highly sensitive person. I can't think of the lady's name. But there's a book, A Highly Sensitive Person, and I'm like, yes, that is me. It's definitely both my children in very different ways. Both of them, we've talked about it. They both identify in different ways as being highly sensitive, and we talk about it as a strength and a gift rather than, but growing up, my dad would say, I've got letters from him saying, I just think you're too sensitive. I don't understand you. He couldn't cope with which I think is because he's highly sensitive as well, but doesn't see it. But I think, sorry, I've forgotten my point. I was going somewhere then. Sorry.
It's so good as well. It'll come back. Don't worry.
But I think that's what it was. Is I see that in Jack. I see his sensitivity, and it reminds me of me. And the fact that I wasn't accepted and allowed to be sensitive, it was like I had to be different. You're not okay because you're too sensitive. You're just too much. You know, that's how I felt. I felt like I was too much. And so I think when other people do that to Jack, I get defensive. So everyone sees that he's horrible to me, but I also protect him, and I try and it's because I'm like, I can see that he's hurting. I can see when he's angry, it's because he's hurting, and I can't punish him for that, because it's like, well, he's hurting right now. There's no point, because his brain is, you know, switched off. He can't think. He can't, you know, he is just raw right now, and I can see all of that. So but I feel like nobody else can, and so I feel like I have to be his protector, if that makes sense.
I get it. I totally get it. I guess what I want to invite you to do is to question whether what you're actually doing is supporting him or hindering him.
Yeah, and I can see it's hindering him now. I see that. Yeah, I had two. I'm gonna have to go and just wake my eldest up in a minute, make sure he's out of bed. I had 2 sessions with a lady who came to film us and watch us play, and she said that I was, you know, I was meant to have more, but our council went bankrupt and I lost all the funding. But she said that I was giving Jack too many options. I was tiptoeing around him too much, and I was like, yeah, because I am afraid of like making the wrong decision, you know, like I'm afraid that I'll put that Lego brick on there and that'll be the wrong, and he'll smash it up, because that's what he does. And I can't cope with that. And I think that's it, isn't it? I can't cope with his big emotions.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Would it be all right if I just run downstairs really quickly? I'm so sorry.
Go and do what you need, love. Oops. Okay, cool. Right. Now, where were we? Because I had something amazing to say. Let me just.
Sorry, I was talking about. You were talking about. Am I making Jack worse or?
Yeah. Because yeah. Thank you. What I'm getting is that his behavior is screaming out for it. You know, he's screaming out for you to be firmer, for you to be tighter, for you to almost contain him more. And I you know, when I work with parents who've got kids who, you know, lose their shit and just lose the plot, and especially with little ones, I actually get them to hold the child, you know, and to hold them and say, I've got you. I'm not going to let you hurt yourself or anybody else. And it becomes this safety. It's like, wow, she's got me, you know, somebody, you know, because I can't control myself, somebody can, you know. And it's such a support system. It's such a grounding, you know, safety. It's a safety piece, and I know that you can see it. And what I want to give to you is just a couple of examples, because, you know, I've been through this with my younger son, and I would be protecting him left, right, and center, and telling other people, telling teachers, telling my mother that, you know, that she was wrong, and I was doing the right thing, and really I was letting him behave like a little shit, you know. I was. So starting to work for you, starting to work on your own emotions, and navigating your way through those, and how to release them. A lot of the work that I do in the expression module in the Pathways for Parenting program is all about emotion. And because, you know, so many of us were told to squish it down. You know, we were told it's not okay to express emotion. You know, it's not okay. Stop your crying. You know, I'll give you something to cry about. You know, all of these things that you hear about parents saying to their kids, and then that's only what's verbalized. The energetics is the way that kids you know, absorb information. And if the parents are uncomfortable about the emotion, and if you think about it, your parents were even more uncomfortable with emotion than you are, and their parents were even more uncomfortable. You know, it was just something you just didn't do. You know, I mean, my mother wore a mask. Everything's fine. You know, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I'm like, you know what, Mum, it's not, and it's okay that it's not. This is in more recent years. But we've been conditioned that big, strong emotion, especially the ones that are labeled negative, you know, anger, frustration, grief, sadness, that it's not okay to express those. So the issue is that it gets trapped in our body. Yeah, we trap it in our bodies, so we push it down, and I don't know whether I mentioned this in the embodied conference, but it gets stuck in the body, and it starts to manifest itself as disease and pain, and you know, all these other ailments that people wander around the world with, thinking that it's, you know, just physical things, and it's not. It's trapped emotion. And to be able to release that emotion, and I don't know whether you've done any embodiment work, any work to start to clear the body. That's a lot of the work that I do. And when I spoke in the embodiment conference, and I've got a magazine interview that's coming out in a couple of weeks, which is exciting, because when I talked about the way that I got myself out of depression, you know, because I had severe postnatal depression, it was all about working with my body. You know, because I'd done a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling, you know, every single cognitive behavioral group therapy that they had. But it wasn't until I started to look at what was actually trapped in my body from years and years and years of squashing it down that things actually started to shift and move. So that's one piece, you know, to start to look at how you're expressing emotion, how you're releasing your emotion, and whether it's okay for you to express emotion. Because if it's not okay for you, and for most of us it hasn't been, so it just, you know, it just stays in our body and gets stuck. So there's lots of tools that you can use to get that out. And the other piece is to support your boy, you know, so that his big emotion isn't freaking you out, so that you can allow him and teach him how to start to manage it. And the other thing that I want to add here is that, you know, as soon as our kids get connection, yeah, through their behavior, whatever it is, they keep doing it. Yeah, even if it doesn't even matter if it's negative. Yeah, they just keep doing it. They just keep doing it. They're like, "Whoa, Mum saw that," you know, and I'm just going to keep doing it. And my little guy is an absolute performer. You know, he dances. He, you know, when you said moves, just moves, and I was like, yeah, that's so my little guy. And you know, and I've put boundaries in, and he said, "Oh, but you know, you really enjoyed that yesterday." And I said, "Yeah, dude, that was yesterday. Today, can't do it. Sorry." You know, and to be really clear with him about what's okay and what's not okay. And I'm going to invite you, my beautiful darling, to get really clear on what's okay and what's not okay. And I'm going to share with you another little story, because your little fella sounds a lot like mine in terms of boundaries, in terms of that need for connection because of his lack of safety, you know, because he doesn't feel safe. And my little guy had safety things going on as well. You know, he didn't want to sleep alone, didn't want to be alone, you know, it was kind of like my shadow, and it was exhausting. It's exhausting, you know, because you never get any time for yourself. But one thing that and when this happened, I realized that when I got firmer with him, he responded better. He responded better. And this is like, no question. That's the rule. Boom. And what happened, I'll share this story because it's such a good one and it really blew my mind. He started wearing hoods, you know, pulled up over his head. And he'd wear them inside and he'd wear them outside. He'd wear it everywhere. Yeah, and this hood, he really attached to it, and it was driving me a bit crazy. And you know, I just got so sick of saying, "Take your hood off inside," and you know, he'd kick up a big fuss, and it would, you know, pulling it up, and you know, not wanting to take it off, and we went through this, you know, days and days of just fight, you know, of dealing with this hood. And in the end, he was in the shower or something, and I took the hood and I put it in the bin. I put it in the bin. And I felt like the meanest person, you know, ever. And when he got out of the shower, he's like, "Where's my hood?" I said, "Dude, it's in the bin." And the relief on that boy's face was mind-blowing, you know, because I'd actually taken the choice out of his hands. And it's going to be interesting for you, because in the choice module, it's actually going to be the opposite. Yeah. Because at the moment, he's got too many choices and he's got too much power. And so you're going to be, you know, dialing that back and empowering yourself so that he feels safe. Yeah. So that he feels safe. So that will be, you know, we'll work in together with that one to so you can see, you know, both ends of that spectrum, because that's the way, you know, everything operates on a spectrum. But when you can start, and there's been other things in terms of playing that same role, and what it is it's like, you know what, dude, I'm going to support you in a way that isn't lovey-dovey, in a way that isn't light and fluffy. And I've actually said to my boys, I'm like, dude, you know, love has a spectrum. Yeah. Over here, it's light and fluffy. Over here, it's a bit shitty and gritty. It's still love. It's still love. And it's like sometimes the love at the shitty and gritty end is a bit of a love slap. You know, it's like, oi, I'm not having that. Yeah, I'm not having that. Yeah. And, you know, as we work together, as we start to work with your own emotion, yeah, and really get clear, and I'd love to hear about that a bit more. And whether or not, yeah, I'm just wondering about support for your little guy. I mean, has he had any since you sort of put your hand up for support? There hasn't been anything?
No, school, but when he started school became his point of reference, and I had many a tearful conversation with his primary school reception teacher, who thought I was completely insane. She didn't see any of it.
Yeah.
But the teaching assistant who was a friend, who was like a mum of my eldest son's like friends, she was like, "Oh yeah, he you know, he hides in the library all the day long, and I used to think he comes out of school happy," and she's like, "He's only comes out of school happy because he's been smiling since afternoon break, knowing he can come home to you, and he's been asking all day long when he can come home to you." But his teacher was like, "No, we don't see anything." The Senko was like, "No, he's fine." So I think and I know when the lady came to film us, she said, "Oh, I think he relies on you. You know, he spends all day long having to contain himself at school, and then when he comes home, he just gives it to you. He says, 'Mum, you take over now. You just take over my, you know, controlling me,' and I don't do a very good job of it." So.
And you know, as you said so beautifully before, you don't know what you don't know. You know, you do the best you can. And now, you know, you're going to have new tools and new awarenesses, and it's a huge one when you can see that your behavior it's coming from love. It's absolutely coming from love, and it's still going to come from love.
Yeah.
But I think he doesn't feel safe, and you're protecting him and disempowering him in that space.
Yeah. And I see that now. I think I felt really angry at myself, really frustrated. But I feel acceptance now. I feel like I did the best I could. I mean, he literally didn't sleep probably for 4 years. And that would drive anyone insane, wouldn't it? So I think, and like you say, always needed me. And I didn't rely on other people. I did it all myself. I thought I could, you know, that's my job. I thought I was born to be a mother. So it's challenged me to the core of who I am. That was what I was meant to be. And all of a sudden I'm rubbish at what I'm meant to be. But I've spent probably the last at least 2 years, if not 3, sort of really focusing on me. I'm trying to take like I say, I've been having baths and going, no, I'm having a bath, even though you're up. And, you know, normally I would do everything when they're in bed, but now my eldest stays up longer. I don't even have that time. So I'm finding ways to make sure that I'm looking after me. I'm filling my cup, and I feel like I'm now in a strong enough place that I can now reach out and help him. But I don't think I could have done that before. You know, now I can see what's happening. I can stand back. I can take that minute to notice. But, you know, 2 years ago, there was no way.
Oh, amazing. You know, and celebrating that, absolutely celebrating that, because it's huge awareness to have. And, you know, we fall into these traps. We just do. And then the guilt that comes, and the negative self-talk that comes when it doesn't work out like we thought it was. You know, it's like, oh, but, you know, I was going to be the best mother ever. And then, you know, and it hasn't worked out the way that I thought it had, because we have all these expectations, which are just so massive. You know, they're so massive. And one thing that I'd like to just place in front of you is around language, you know, and just being really mindful about the language that you're using with yourself, you know. And I know that in a lot of ways you are shifting it, because I can feel it. I can feel the way that you start to place the words, you know, rather than what would have come before that. I can feel that. And, you know, bringing those acceptance pieces in a lot more. And really, really starting to shift the focus, because you don't need to help him in terms of it being out like that. Because if you put the focus 100% here, his behavior will change. His behavior will change, because if you're putting it here, if you're like, no, I am the most important person in my life. Yeah, I'm the most important person in this family. Yeah, self. Because if your tank isn't full, then you can't give to the others around you. And also that, you know, the boundaries, which I can feel that you're starting to work on. And especially, I mean, I didn't even know what boundary meant back when I was first a parent, and I had zero boundaries. So building up, to let your kids know, and really be open with them, you know, just say, look, you know, I am not very good with these boundaries things, and these boundaries are going to help me be a better mum. So that I can be the best mum that I can be. Because if I'm knackered all the time, if I'm tired all the time, then I just end up shouty and grumpy. And, you know, and I know that you guys don't really enjoy that much. So you know, it's about bringing that transparency and that honesty in, because our kids love it when they hear that, because it's real, you know, it's real. And so often we're afraid to actually say that. You know, we're afraid to say it. So I think there's using that dance the opposite, you know, using that tool, because it's really going to support you. You know, when you get into these places, it's like, okay, what's the opposite here? What is the exact opposite here? Knowing that they're both love, you know, even if you've gone into that protection mode and you flip out of that and say, actually, dude, what you're doing is not okay. You know, it's really not okay. And this is why, you know, and putting that boundary in, and knowing that that is also coming from a place of love, and that he is going to feel safer when those boundaries are tighter, not looser. Tighter. He needs to feel like you've got him. Even if he's flailing about, you know. And I've held on to my little guy when he you know, he was a bit younger now, but I've held on to him really tightly, and I've just said, I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting you hurt yourself or other people. So
I definitely done that.
We do it, because, you know, the kids, our kids need to know. They need to know that we've got them. They really need to know. And the last thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I know that in terms of understanding our stories, or, you know, starting to see them and become aware of them, and understanding the beliefs that are driving them, what I really noticed, and just wanting to you know, ensure that came through before I ask you about your how your, you know, your expression of your feelings, because I do want to know that, is the compensation behavior. Because a lot of the time for me in my past is that when I was aware, when I first became aware of my not good enough piece, and I really saw it, and I could see what I was doing, you know, I could see how it just sunk me, you know, and I spiraled down into this, you know, pit of despair, and that was the way that I navigated it. That was the only way that I knew how to. It was like, oh my God, this is just horrible. And then once I started to shift into a different place, I actually compensated for the behavior. And it's really interesting. And I'm actually, there's pieces of this that I'm coming through as at the moment, because when I'm coming into a new space in my work, and the way that I'm actually going to language it and you know, get the message out, which is really interesting. That's a great example, because when I started, and it was going through the lockdown process, and I was doing all these summits, and I was talking about freedom, and it was all big and loud, and it was like, this is what you can get, and here it is. And when I saw that, it's like, wow, there's my compensation behavior. That's it right there. You know, so noticing the not good enough, sinking into the pit of despair, coming to the other side of that, because we always have to flip to the other side to feel what the other side feels like. Yeah, so that we start to balance out this crazy seesaw. So my overcompensation, you know, my compensation behavior was big, and here I am, and blah blah blah. And then the middle bit, you know, the pivot point is actually it's about acceptance. Yeah, it's not about freedom, it's about acceptance. And that for me is reconciling those two ends. Yeah, so for you it's going to be, okay, flimsy boundaries, wobbly jellyfish, to, you know, really putting them in, and, you know, just finding one to put in or two to put in. You know, it's like when mum goes to have a shower, no one comes in, no one even comes near that door. It's off limits, you know, even like put some tape up across the door, or, you know, like really ramp it up and really make it a thing. And when you can do that, you can add fun to it, you know, if you've got some of that in there. Or you just, you know, you just really make it clear to the boys, you know, this is a no-go zone for 20 minutes, even get a timer and stick it on the door, you know, nobody comes near this door. And you know, to start to get those rules and boundaries in. It doesn't matter what it is, because it's just getting practice in. And especially with your little guy, I mean, obviously he's the only one that really matters, isn't it? Your older boy is all good, but especially with your little guy. And even you can even get your older boy on board, you know, and say, right, you know, then you got to keep him away from, you know, I don't know, just see how that feels, the dynamic, partner on board. And, you know, that's what I would like you to do, is to really get clear on the boundaries and the rules, and work on one at a time, and get it in like really clearly. You know, one thing that you can just put that, especially, you know, it's got to do with your younger fella, something that is not allowing you to do, something something that he's doing that isn't okay, that really isn't okay. Just pick one thing, say, you know what, when you say that to me, that's not okay. Yeah, and just and then, you know, then make that the thing that you're working on.
Okay.
So don't make it overwhelming for yourself. Just choose one.
Yeah, I think that's what I do. I think when you talk about sorry, I'm going to have to go. I've got to leave for school in 10 minutes. But when we talk about compensation, I think what I do is I work really hard, and I all guns blazing. I throw everything I've got into something, and then I burn out. I can't sustain it. Yeah. It's too much. So I will like come up with all these things. Once my eldest will be like, here mum goes again, because she's done a plan, she's done a schedule. This is like itemized every 15 minutes, and, you know, and then it's like, and then it just goes out the window because I can't do it, and so I'm learning to not do that, definitely. But I find it really hard to, you know, I like black and white boundaries and rules, and you know, and I find it hard to. It's like when they get broken or undone, that's like, that's it, forget it, then I can't be bothered anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So what we will do next time we chat is to, okay, what happens when they are broken? You know, what happens when they are continually crossed?
That's where I struggle. That's where my husband gets cross, because I'll say, don't do that, Jack. Don't talk to me like that. And then when he does it again, I'm like, I don't know where to go with this. I don't know how.
So consequences, you know, well, what do we do when this happens? All right, we can talk about that next time. You've got to go, but maybe leave me a voice message, or just write me something around what I'd said about the emotion, about
okay,
about what's
will do. I'll write that down so I don't forget.
Yeah, because that's going to be a really important piece, because that's one of the pieces that send you into a yeah.
Thank you so much.
All
Sorry,
right.
I've got to go. I've really enjoyed it.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.